Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast. I'm joined today by Bill, Newt. You're on summer vacation. It's good to see you. I don't think I've seen you on one of our podcasts for 2 or 3 months. I've seen you on Owens.
Yep. So I don't think we've done anything together since before the draft. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it. So yeah, it's been a while since I've been on Mrs. Irrelevant. It's fun to be back. I was kind of looking forward to this after we got it set up.
Cool. So Bill and Newt are going to be doing their offensive top 10s. And we're going to go like offensive line, quarterback, running back, tight end, wide receiver. We'll go through them in order. The first position we're going to do is offensive line. Newt's list is on the left. Bill's list is on the right. Newt, do you want to tell everybody your top 10 offensive linemen?
Yeah, and I'm glad that I get a chance to dry run all these names. I'm sure Bill will be able to correct me on some pronunciations because I've just been saying most of them in my head. So starting from the top and working all the way to number 10, this includes tackles, guards, and centers. I have Caleb Tiernan out of Northwestern. Caden Proctor out of Alabama, Francis Maui-Goa out of the University of Miami, Jake Slaughter out of the University of Florida, Xavier Chaplin, who transferred to Auburn, I believe.
That is correct. You are
Caleb
correct.
Lomu out of Utah, Jaden Roberts, guard, the rest of them, Jake Slaughter is center, Jaden Roberts, guard, out of Alabama, Spencer Fano, the other tackle out of Utah, DJ Campbell, guard out of Texas, and then Parker Brailsford. Yet again, another Bama offensive lineman, this time the center. So I've got 3 of that line in my top 10.
Cool. Bill, you want to run through your top 10?
Yeah, so my top 10 is a little similar but a little different. This one for me is going to be just tackles and guards in my top 10 offensive linemen. First up is Francis Maui-Goa from Miami. Caleb Lomu and Spencer Fano, the Utah tackles, go back-to-back at 2 and 3. Caden Proctor, Alabama offensive tackle at number 4. Caleb Tiernan, Northwestern offensive tackle, number 5. Falili Fa'amoe, the Wake Forest offensive tackle. Gennings Dunker, the Iowa offensive tackle with the best mullet in college football, hands down. Emil Wagner.
Too.
Yeah, he's up there in terms of his mustache too. Emil Wagner, the Notre Dame offensive tackle. And then my 2 guards rounding out my top 10 offensive linemen, Caden Green, the left guard at Missouri, and Chase Besantis, the left guard from Texas A&M, rounding out my top 10.
I already want to say I'm glad I didn't have Dunker or Wagner because I would have screwed up both their pronunciations. I watched both of those guys, but when he said Gennings, I'm would have gotten that wrong, and then I would have said Emil instead of Emil. So I'm thankful. Not that they didn't make my top 10. I liked both of those guys, but I didn't have to screw up a pronunciation.
So, Newt, what strikes you other than the pronunciations about Bill's list? Anybody that either jumps out at you or that you have questions on?
So I want to start with this just because, and for everyone out there, Bill has watched about 6 to 7 times as many players as I have. So I want to put that out there a little bit. I'll talk about my list and how it's constructed. With this offensive line group, it's a little bit unique and kind of how I'm going through the process. But, Bill, I want to get your take on Falili Fa'amoa. I said it wrong already. Because he's not a guy I watched. Some of the other guys I've taken a look at, but him in particular, I'd love to hear what you have to say about him.
Yeah, so the Falili Fa'amoe, I'm assuming the pronunciation guide, that's what I've got. Former Washington State Cougars transferring to Wake Forest this season. He's a prototypical NFL tackle in terms of his size, has the frame that you look for. He has some of the rawest power that I've seen in an offensive tackle. I call him the Undertaker. This guy wants to bury defenders in the ground, put them there. Very physical at the point of attack. A point of attack on arrival, physical as all get out. Has a mean streak that borders on criminal. He wants to hurt you, hurt your children, and your children's children. That's the way he handles offensive line play. He does have long arms that show a good upside in pass protection. Even his feet aren't perfect. He still can recover by using those long arms. The problem is the footwork is inconsistent. His foot speed's a work in progress. He's not going to be the fastest guy. He is a little bit taller, so he's going to play too tall at times. He's one of those taller 6'5", 6'6" tackles, plays a little bit taller. In addition to that, his hands have a tendency to drift outside at times, and he got away with a lot of holding calls at Washington State, but now in the ACC, he's going to have to tighten that up too. The biggest knock for me is on quick inside counters and stunts. So when they're moving to his inside hip, he struggles with edge rushers that can do that, whether it's the power or speed. It's his tell. If you get inside of him, you beat him. Part of that is he just doesn't have a change of direction quickness that you see because he's a little bit on the bigger side, the taller side. But when you watch his game, you see a lot of what Max Starks did as the right tackle for the Pittsburgh Steelers in that same mold. He's a big guy who can block out the sun and put people in the dirt. But if you get on his inside hip, you will blow by him. And that's, if anybody from Wake Forest is watching and they're close to Fa'amoe, make sure to tell him, get on that inside hip. And part of that, he can help if you have a good guard next to him at the NFL level. If you have a good right guard that can help bridge the gap between the two. But if you're thinking of him as a blindside left tackle protector, I wouldn't, because he's going to get blown on that outside easily. But if you put him on the right side as a bruiser, put a good right guard next to him, he'll be perfectly fine 10-year starter in the NFL.
He sounds like, as you're describing him, Isaiah World popped in my head. He sounds like a stronger version of World, kind of just based off everything that you said to me. And the first couple words that you say, where he's got a mean streak and he just wants to bury people, that is my kind of offensive lineman. That's why I like Tyler Booker so much last year. I just like those assholes in the trenches. I think that's absolutely how you have to run that. That's sweet. I just added him to my list. I will be watching him before I flip over to the defensive side of the football, for where you are with that. I guess just trying to think here with Proctor, because I got a chance to watch all four of those guys. How close is Proctor to the Utah Bash Bros and Maui Goa?
So on my big board on my top 64, which is over at twsn.net, I have an article up there of my top 64. If you want to go check that out, make sure you check it out. I have the Maui Goa as my third overall prospect, the Bash Bros from Utah as 9 and 10, and then Caden Proctor is 21. So okay. There's a gap, but they're all still first round prospects. My concerns with Caden Proctor is, yes, he's 6'7", 369, but he's 6'7", 369. And what concerns me the most is when you get a speed rusher on him, his hand placement is all over the place. He's grabbing and gasping for air. And I don't know if you picked up on this with how much you watch Proctor, but watch when Alabama's offense goes up tempo. You see him get winded easily. His cardio is not where it should be. You see a lot of times he's hands on his hips, hands on his knees, trying to catch up for breath. All in all, he's got what I like to call battleship strength. This is a guy who's a freighter that's going to push people out of the way. But if you get fast enough edge rushers around him, I don't know if he's got that change of direction to be able to handle that. He's a lot like, and it's a cheap comp because they both went to Alabama, but he's Evan Neal 2.0. The same things we said about Evan Neal, we say about Proctor, but I argue that Proctor is stronger than Neal was coming out. I think
he is, but I love that you say that, because the one thing that, and this is kind of like the first thing that introduced me to like technique and how you evaluate offensive linemen, was Evan Neal just dipping his head and kind of the way that he plays. And I see it out of Proctor. And I was reminded of that. And I love that you called that out. No, I agree with all of those things. When you see 369, and I'll say this, he doesn't look 369 or he wears it well, if you're to say that. I think like you hear that and you think DeJuan Jones or something to that effect, where it's like kind of grossly mismanaged weight, and I don't think it is, but to the point, there are some limitations that come with that. I think that for him, I wrote down, I think he moves well enough with that, but he does have athletic limitations when you talk about that short area quickness. In the run game, like you said, he's going to run people over, and it's not even going to be, a question in terms of if he gets his hands on you. He was one of the best run blocking players that I looked at. But in pass pro too, he's great as long as he can keep his feet in front of them. So I probably, like I said, I haven't done any defensive players, so I don't have anywhere near close to a big board. Obviously, he's number 2 for me, so I don't think we're too far off with that. I mean, Maui Goa is right there. Both their grades actually came in on my scale extremely close. So I see those two kind of for there. I think I'm just a little bit lower on the Bash Bros. Still like them a lot, but I love that breakdown for Caden Proctor for you.
Yeah. So
on your board, where do you have a cutoff where you would project the player in round 1 right now to a day 2
man.
player?
You're asking me this question, and so for like everyone listening, I just got I just changed the way that I grade prospects, and a lot of help from Josh Townsend. Shout out to one of the OGs. And it's kind of changed like the way that I'm able to say like first, second, third round. I'm starting to get an idea. Caleb Tiernan, as I'm looking at it and kind of getting a feel for it, I think he'd be for sure a first round grade. Proctor and Maui Goa for me are extremely close, and they both be first round grades, are fringe first round grades for me. Like I said, I might come back in a month and say, no, they're definite first rounds. It's just me trying to get a little bit more of a handle on it. And then the other thing I'll say to my list, like Jake Slaughter's up there really high for me. He comes in at number 4. For this list and these purposes, I haven't had a chance to put in what is really important to me, which is positional value. So I have Jake Slaughter graded fairly highly for an interior offensive lineman, but that position is nowhere near as valuable as you would see an offensive tackle. So while he has a higher like raw score for me and on my grading scale, once I put my big board together, he's going to slide down. I don't want to say significantly. I think he still might be a top 10 guy for me, but I would expect Chaplin, Lomu, maybe even Fano to pop up above him. I think that would be kind of where that cutoff starts, but you'd see Slaughter and Roberts dropping and some of those guys popping up a little bit more. So I did want to give that as a little bit of a asterisk or a word of caution to anyone that's listening. And they see Jake Slaughter up there as number 4 for me. Ahead of like those guys. I think that some of them are better prospects. I just don't have that added into my grading yet.
Yeah. And I'm with you too that I'm glad you mentioned that. So for what it's worth, Jake Slaughter and Parker's Brailsford are 2 of my top 3 center prospects, but they don't make my top 64 because for me, the center position is so devalued in the NFL. It's all about tackles and guards, and then center kind of falls by the wayside. So if you had that positional value and all things were equal, they would probably be on my top 10 towards the bottom with Green and Basantis. But the fact that they play center, for context too, 9 of the 10 names that I have on my side are in my top 64. The only one who didn't make it is Basantis, and he would be number 65 if we're talking about it. But to not have a center in the top 64, some people might think that's crazy, but that's just the positional value of the NFL is that they're not highly valued. I mean, look at Tyler Linderbaum for Baltimore. He was an elite center prospect coming out of Iowa and still ended up in the 20s.
Yep. I mean, some people were calling him a blue chip prospect for that position, and I don't think you would have heard that much pushback on that. But once again, when you come to that position, that plays a large role. So definitely something that impacts my list and kind of where some of these guys are. I will say one other thing as I'm going through this, and Jim, to kind of the question that you asked where like I have these guys, I'm actually really glad that I started switching the way that I do things, because Jake Slaughter last year, I was pretty down on him. And now that I've actually kind of gotten away to categorize these players, I look at him and I'm like, holy crap, he does this thing really well, this thing really well, this thing really well, things that are extremely valuable to me. And he went from like my center 6 to now my center 1. So something that I'm really, really happy I got an opportunity to flip to.
Newt, I was surprised that Slaughter was that high after because you and Owen covered interior offensive linemen last year, and Slaughter and Brailsford were both players, and DJ Campbell for that matter, and Jaden Roberts.
Yep.
So 4 of your players, there's detailed information. You can see Newt breaking down all 4 of those players from the 2025 cycle. Those podcasts are still available on the channel.
And for what it's worth too, I also
go ahead, Bill.
I was gonna say, for what it's worth too, also PFF also just dropped their big board for the summer, and Jake Slaughter's up there at 15th for them. So he